Thank you all so much for having us. We are here to talk about co-designing products with people with disabilities. So before we kick off, we'll do some quick intros. My name is Erin Leary. I work at Meta Reality Labs as the accessibility strategist. And this is...
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicol Perez. I use she, her pronouns, and I support the equity and accessibility strategy team within Meta. Quick descriptor, I'm a little Latina with long brown hair, brown eyes, and a yellow striped shirt, and glazed orchids are hanging from my ears.
And I am a somewhat tall, lanky, white-skinned female with long black hair and glasses. Pronouns are she, her. Before we dive into co-design, which is one of our favorite topics to talk about, we also wanted to just shout out that thank you all so much for your feedback here at XR Access Symposium. We are here writing things down, as well as at our demo booth this afternoon and yesterday. We're making sure to keep track of everything we're hearing so we can bring it back to our teams and amplify the voices here.
Yeah, keep the feedback coming. Find us in breaks or on our booth in the second floor. And then this afternoon, we will be hosting a breakout to dive deeper into best practices for co-designing products with people with disabilities. So if you want more detail and want to get more in the weeds, we're going to be hosting that later this afternoon.
Yeah. All right. So drop the clicker. I don't want to double click too much. All right. So just to kick off. There we go. All right. I'm gonna read the definition of co-design, and now I'm clicking backwards. I think I only clicked one. All right. So the definition that we use at Reality Labs and Meta for co-design is an inclusive approach to product development that invites external stakeholders to participate as equal collaborators in design. Adopting co-design moves us from user as subject to user as partner, imbuing decisions with local knowledge, values, and theories. So that is the definition that we operate with for the term co-design. I know that it can be used in many different ways. But really talking into why this is important. I think we're speaking to an audience that has some understanding of co-design, but not only is co-design essential in building for accessibility, we take the approach of nothing about us without us. It also drives innovation, and we really highlight to our product teams the benefits for them as well. Really ends up landing things that actually can get shipped eventually. And so it drives innovation. It definitely uncovers unknown biases that we may have. It helps build relationships and partners for longer term engagement and for their external stakeholder impact, as well as adds a lot of credibility to our products.
As we go into the next slide, I actually want to know, a show of hands from the audience, how many of you all have either participated in a co-design where you're like building products with another company, an institution, a group of people? How many of you all have participated in one? Okay, quite a few of you. How many of you all have hosted one? Okay, a few of y'all. So a lot of y'all, throughout this presentation, we're really diving into the how we do it. A lot of the products that we've co-designed are actually still in development and have not launched yet. So you won't see a ton of case studies here because of that. But we're really sort of diving deep into what are we learning, what's challenging. And so we'll share a little bit more about mistakes we've made, what we've learned throughout the process. But we really also think about co-design, we can look at co-design in a spectrum. There's all the way to the right on the screen, you'll see design by people. This is where a community leads the co-design process. It is to solve a specific community need. all the way down to what we call design at people, which is where designers and decision makers are building for what they think people want. We're sort of following somewhere in the middle right now with design with people. So we're collaborating across industries, institutions, to make products that, to ensure one, that products are accessible, but also that they benefit communities and solve for unique needs of communities. So sort of this collaboration of industry with community partners, with experts, with nonprofits, et cetera. Okay, so how do we think about co-design from a product development process? So at Meta, we run through sort of a very high level product development process that goes from idea generation all the way to shipping. That what we say shipping when we actually launch the product externally, all the way to shipping a product and then tracking and maintaining the product. So we we really can use co-design across every stage of product development, not just in the beginning stages when we're ideating, but all the way down through to the end of co-design, to the end of product development. So at the idea generation phase, we may be working, the role of co-design helps us understand and prioritize needs, pain points, opportunities, shared values with the communities that we're looking to serve. To idea generation, which helps us brainstorm, co-create ideas with local communities, local experts, and brainstorm ideas to sort of solve some of those pain points, to build shared values, down to prototyping, where we're testing and iterating, we're prototyping ideas with our users and with communities, and then iterating on those designs along the way. And then even co-developing go-to-market strategies. So how do we take a product to market? How do we develop those strategies with those communities, validate ideas, get feedback from the broader community, and then continuing to pilot and learn once a product is in market. How do we co-create ways for us to get feedback more easily from users and identify opportunities for further iteration? So how does co-design compare to other methods we may be using to gather user feedback and work with communities? So co-design in particular helps us bring external participants as equal collaborators. So they have decision-making power in our design processes, and they are building products with the community. They are not just giving feedback. They are there to sort of roll up their hands with us, and we're there to build together. Traditional UX research, and in particular, the way that we've seen it work at Meta and across big tech, is external participants are subjects, right? So we observe how somebody uses a product in research. Usually a researcher will synthesize that, deliver those insights to the product team. It's kind of like a game of telephone sometimes. And then product team takes action based on that UX research. And then what we've seen as feedback sessions, what you might see from, for example, policy teams or marketing teams, where they invite feedback from users. But at this stage, those kind of feedback sessions are oftentimes further out in the product development process, where products are already kind of baked. It's harder to make foundational changes to a product at this stage. So they are all beneficial, and you can use them together, but distinct, but they're also distinct. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what a behind the scenes actually looks like at our co-designs, and would love to chat more with those of you that have hosted one, what yours have looked like, so that we can share some best practices. But we've done them in a couple of different ways at Meta. One is through almost 3 days of co-design summits, where we bring folks together to work on a problem. And we usually do these at a time where we know that product teams are in the process of building their roadmaps. So we want to get in at the right time so that we can take action immediately after some of these co-designs. We've also done co-design cohorts where we work with the community for months, bringing them back or through virtual sessions where we are co-creating products and iterating alongside folks. You can also do a combination of these. You start with a longer term summit and then follow throughout the product development process with the same cohort. And then there are other forms like advisory boards or what we call residencies, where we invite community members to come and they're kind of like joining our team for a couple of months to co-create products with us.
And so what does an agenda include? If we're getting together for 1 to 2 days, how does that look? Up to 3 days, it's a lot of time to fill. In either way, sometimes we are limited by time in which we condense this agenda. So it just really varies by our availability and how long we can be with folks for. So first and foremost, we start with trust building and knowledge sharing. This is really getting to know the why behind everyone's point of view. That includes both the external stakeholders we have coming and co-designers, whether that's people with disabilities, other ethnicities, races, et cetera, and our product team. So a lot of time is spent just getting to know each other, which sometimes it's like, is that really effective and efficient? But it's an essential space to start for the rest of the agenda. We then move into understanding community needs and product constraints. And this is a really great time to share firsthand perspectives of what folks need, as well as for the product team to really discuss and like, okay, well, that's not possible, but like, what can we do about that? We move on to building shared values and brainstorming. So at this point, we still have yet to actually create something. So it's a lot of time in the forefront of that. But making sure that we all align on shared criteria that we are aiming for. So that way that every single person in the room, whether they're from Meta, external, or otherwise, is looking to get towards the same North Star. And then finally, we get to prototype, test, and iterate. So this can involve all sorts of things, whether it looks like arts and crafts as seen in this final photo of Paul building with all sorts of styrofoam, to drawing, creating something on the computer and beyond.
Cool. Okay, so some of the best practices that we've accumulated across a couple of years now of working on co-designs with users with disabilities. One is really building trust before product. We prioritize making sure that we build good relationships with partners, that we are not just bringing them in to help co-create products with us, but that we are also supporting them and their missions, if they're a nonprofit or an individual, figuring out ways to sort of also build equitable partnerships, right? So ensuring a level playing field, developing a fair value exchange. So we talk a lot about compensation with partners, ensuring that they feel well compensated for the ideas they bring to the table. We have discussions about like what would it look like even to add users that help us build products to patents, as well as openly communicating often. So after these co-designs happen, how do we communicate with folks along the way? Like what happens after these? What have we built? How have we created higher fidelity prototypes? What have been the challenges that we've faced? It takes a different layer of transparency, really bringing folks behind the scenes on like, here's what's challenging about sort of taking this up the chain now and getting this approved to eventually launch in product. The fourth sort of best practice that we've gathered is really being culturally competent. So investing a lot of time in understanding socio-historical context of the communities we're inviting. We will often do trainings with product teams and with internal folks beforehand to ensure that we are showing up in ways that are conscious and thoughtful, as well as admitting ignorance when we don't know something. And then the last one is continuing to design throughout product development. So recognizing things like power dynamics. So for all of our co-designs, we actually have a third-party facilitator. Meta is not facilitating them because we find that it balances out any sort of power dynamics that are in place. And folks are more likely to be really honest with what they don't like about the products when they're not telling it directly to a meta person. Um, yeah, really engaging partners across product development, but also program development. So we gather a ton of feedback from folks on the actual co-design process, and we work to iterate alongside them to ensure that the process continues to be equitable. All right, let me just double check. I saw a sign, but I did not see how much time do we have left? 5 minutes. Okay, we can do this. Okay, so some key learnings. These are from the co-designs we've run, what's gone well, where we've failed, and so a few key do's and don'ts that we've gathered. So for identifying a co-design question, this is where you're working with a product team and you're sort of and with users. We're looking to understand the do's are we want to understand the community needs. We want to understand their desires, their pain points. Oftentimes, we're referring to research that might have already been conducted. We're looking at data. So, we're looking at our products and seeing who might be having a worse time with our products. And then figuring out, okay, now based on that data, we're going to invite those very people that we know are having a bad time with our products to come co-design with us. And we also really want to identify what success looks like for both the communities, like what problem are we trying to solve for the community, and also what success looks like for the product team. So really getting clear on like what are we going to end these 2 days or this co-design with? What are the artifacts we're going to take away so that we know what to build after this? And really continuing to iterate on the question to ensure that it lends itself to those desired outcomes. So every single item on that agenda throughout the 2 days is very intentionally put there to ensure that we can do that. Cool, let's keep them.
Okay, another topic of things that we've learned is selecting and preparing our co-designers. So co-designers are not just folks that are internal, but also the folks that are external. Everyone is a co-designer. And this involves a lot of in advance preparation. So we never want anyone to show up to our events unaware, unprepared. So that includes at least one Zoom gathering of everyone that will be attending prior, along with a lot of education provided to our teams ahead of time and the co-designers ahead of time of what they can expect, who they can expect, what it will look like, and making sure when people arrive in the space, they're ready to rock and there are no surprises. I'm going to move through these quite quickly, so feel free to snap a picture if you want to read them later. Another section that we've learned a lot about is preparing our product teams. With accessibility in particular, one of the things that we've found really beneficial is to ensure our product teams are well educated on assistive technology. That's not necessarily something that all of our product teams are aware of, and giving them the time to try and play and better understand. So when they go into the room, they can ask folks with lived experience about it rather than what it is. Third section is
one quick thing that we'll mention in the previous slide with, it's a little because I think this is an important point to emphasize in terms of what we've learned to not do. This is an interesting one. It seems like a very minuscule thing, but have product team members take notes or facilitate. Like what we don't want is for people to feel like we're just there to observe them. We want to be co-creating, and oftentimes product teams wants to sort of blend into the background and just be the note takers. And so what we've learned to do, I mean, because we want them to be building with communities as well, what we've learned to do is we have equity team, accessibility team be the ones that are note taking and facilitating in small groups so that product team can show up and fully participate and be present and be out of laptops, etc.
Great call out. All right. And then setting an agenda, I mentioned this earlier, but really prioritizing, there we go, building understanding exercises up front and really empowering, especially external co-designers to share what they know, making sure that their voices are just as loud as any internal voices, and really discussing the impacts behind the different decisions our product team is making. All things in our agendas are like time box and exercise, so they're activity based, which is really helpful to provide structure to these conversations and ensure equality across voices. And brainstorming during a co-design, this is a space where having a third party is really helpful, not only to make everyone feel comfortable sharing, but also encourage people to building on each other's ideas and making sure turn taking is happening, etc. I'm going to keep running through because we have 60 seconds left. And lastly, something that we have learned a lot about is debriefing with the product team. So after these events, I think we've even heard mentioned at this summit is, okay, well, like, how does that thing actually get built? And so we have structured time with our product team following to take all of the synthesized ideas and begin working through an impact and feasibility exercises and get things to a place where we can actually ensure delivery of these items. And we'll be really excited to share the past few co-designs that we've held. And when those things come to launch, making sure that those voices are well represented. With that, would love to open it up if we have, Dylan, do we have any question time?
I think we could take one question from the audience here.
Great.
And I see Shuri has one in front there.
This is really great. So congratulations. I totally agree with everything you said. I was wondering, I have lots of questions, but I was wondering, do you have any insights on how to code design technologies that are completely inaccessible to the code designers? So this is something we run into with like XR, for example, virtual reality. How do we get, for example, blind people involved in the co-design process if they don't really have a concept or experience with it to begin with?
Fantastic question. This is tricky, right? Like right now, we know that our product is not accessible to folks with no vision and low vision. And so we've done a few things in addition to a lot of exploratory descriptions. We do actually have all participants get in our headset and see what they do experience, share those thoughts. And then actually that's where we start. So based off of the current experience, we're really in the ideation phase with the external participants and saying, okay, like here's what you experienced, here's the goods, here's a lot of the things that weren't so great, and let's begin to iterate on the solutions. And then, of course, as our product, depending on who's using it or features that are launched eventually in the future, as the things become more accessible, then it's a perfect time to redo the co-design process again and to have that iterative process over time. But it is tricky for sure, and it does involve a lot of conversation back and forth, and sometimes companions explaining their experience to their loved one or other person they're there for, since sometimes having that, knowing someone better, they can communicate better about what it's like in the headset, as opposed to me with someone who I don't know as well. But yeah, great point.
All right, well, I think that's all the time we have for now.